All right, let's start with a pretty wild claim from, well, arguably the greatest investor alive. Warren Buffett once said he knew how to guarantee not hope for, not aim for, but guarantee a massive return on his money. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that exact strategy. And that's the number, 50%. A year. Just to put that in perspective, the average return of the stock market is what, around 10%? So when Buffett says he can hit 5 times that, yeah, that's not just bold, it's a monumental claim. But of course, there's always a catch, right? And this one's fascinating. He said this was only possible if he was managing a small amount of money. We're talking less than $1 million. So it really makes you wonder, what's the secret? What on earth would the Oracle of Omaha do to pull off something that sounds basically impossible? So Buffett's answer really has two parts to it. Let's start with what you might call the mechanical answer. The literal step-by-step process he'd use to hunt down these incredible investments. When somebody asked him how he'd do it, his reply was both incredibly simple and, honestly, completely daunting. He said he'd do it by reading. Specifically, by digging through 20,000 pages of these old-school financial manuals, things like the Moody's manuals. And here's the thing people always seem to miss. He meant that literally. This isn't some metaphor for work hard. The whole strategy is built on a foundation of almost superhuman diligence. It's about pure, unfiltered, exhaustive research. So what's the point of all that reading? Well, the goal is to become the world's expert on tiny, obscure companies. It's like a treasure hunt through financial data, trying to find businesses that are completely off Wall Street's radar. Then he'd build a whole portfolio of what he famously calls cigar butts, stocks that have been thrown away by everyone else, but still have one last good puff left in them. Now, this isn't just some theory, okay? He actually lived this strategy in his early career. So let's look at a perfect real-world example of how this works. A tiny, forgotten company called the Green Bay and Western Railroad. And this is what's so telling about the level of detail he was operating on. See, back then, railroads had these unofficial nicknames. This one was known as Grab, Baggage, and Walk, or GB&W. That's the kind of nerdy insider knowledge you only get when you're completely immersed in a subject. And this is just a brilliant illustration of the kind of prize you find at the end of the hunt. The company's whole financial structure was a complete mess. It was bizarrely complicated. The stock acted like a bond, and the bond acted like the stock. Now, this is exactly the kind of inefficient, weird situation a big-time money manager would never, ever touch. But for a small investor who's done the homework, it's a gold mine. Okay, but reading 20,000 pages, that's just the how. It's only the first layer of the onion. Now let's get to the real secret, the mindset, the secret ingredient that makes all that hard work even possible in the first place. And there it is. This right here is the absolute heart of the whole strategy. Buffett is dead serious when he says that if your only motivation is money, you will fail. You have to be genuinely, deeply, head over heels in love with the subject itself. That passion, that's the engine. So you've got these two sides of the coin, right? On one side, you have the method. Read everything, find the weird companies, analyze all the data. But on the other, you've got the mindset. Love the subject, find the game itself fascinating, and be driven by just pure curiosity. One side is just a set of instructions, the other is the fuel, and you absolutely cannot have one without the other. So you can really boil this whole idea down into a 3-step philosophy. First, you have to find your arena, the topic that your brain is just naturally wired for. Second, develop a real passion for it. Immerse yourself because you love to learn, not just because you want to earn. And third, you gotta learn to play the game, where the thrill of the hunt is the real reward, and the money, well, that's just how you keep score. So what's the big takeaway for us? How do we actually apply this wisdom, whether we're investors or not? Let's talk about the search for your own 20,000 pages. It doesn't get much more direct than that, does it? The secret to extraordinary success isn't just about outworking everybody else. It's about finding the right kind of work, the thing you are uniquely designed to do, the field where your natural talents give you an edge, and then you just commit to it completely. And that, right there, is the ultimate lesson. This was never really about making money. It's a lesson about where passion and focus meet. The goal isn't to force yourself to read something you hate. The goal is to discover that one subject that you would happily, obsessively read 20,000 pages about, because that is where your superpower is hiding. So
I'll just leave you with this question. Forget about your job title. Forget about the salary for just a second. What subject makes you come alive? What's the thing where the work actually feels like play? What is your 20,000 pages? Because according to one of the most successful people on the planet, the answer to that question, that's the real secret.